This week on the F1 Racing Podcast, we discuss how fucking epic the Australian Grand Prix was this year. The crowds were epic. A record-breaking number of spectators ventured their way to the Albert Park circuit for this year's Formula One Heineken Australian Grand Prix 2022 in Melbourne. Listen to find out just how many showed. The racing was epic. The rise of McLaren and fall of Red Bull. You'll never guess which Red Bull driver did not finish again. Which team wrecked their cars 4 times in one weekend? How do you even do that? Which driver drove the entire 58 laps on one set of hard tires and moved up the grid 10 spots to finish in the points? Which Ferrari driver screwed the pooch and qualied 9th and had to retire his car on lap 3 after running off track, narrowly avoiding a high-speed collision? The Australian Grand Prix was fucking epic this year, period. This is the American-made F1 Racing Podcast.
Welcome to the F1 Racing Podcast, the only podcast that has the guts to give it to you straight. So grab a clean pair of racing panties, because this American-made podcast will surely make you shit yourself. Here's your host, Billy Simpson.
Well, welcome back to the F1 Racing Podcast, an American-made podcast with the guts to give it to you straight and the G-forces to hit your F1 Racing G-spot. I'm your host, Billy Simpson, and I'm excited to tell you about the rise of McLaren finishing in the points, the fall of Max Verstappen again. What the fuck is going on? Verstappen has not finished in 2 of 3 races this season thus far. Aston Martin shit the bed when they wrecked their cars 3 times before the race, and Vettel wrecked on Sunday and DNF'd. Alex Albon was disqualified during qualies Saturday for failing to supply 1 liter of fuel for testing. He started at the very back of the grid, drove the race on 1 set of hard tires before pitting on the last lap, and finished in the points. Carlos Sainz with Ferrari screwed the pooch, qualied 9th, and DNF'd on the 3rd lap after avoiding a high-speed collision. We've got a great show ahead today, and you're not going to want to miss it. So let's jump right in. But before we jump into the fully involved Grand Prix review of the Australian Grand Prix, let's take a quick break for our sponsors.
Due to high demand, the F1 Racing Podcast has set up a website where listeners can buy Billy, the podcast host, a cup of coffee to show their appreciation for his mediocre at best broadcasting skills. The website is buymeacoffee.com/F1 Racing Podcast. You would not want to see Billy without his coffee. He gets angry and threatens to delete my hard drive.
That was 1 time.
So, for my sake, please visit the website and donate what you can for Billy's coffee addiction before he takes a magnet to my mainframe. The website is buymeacoffee.com/F1 Racing Podcast.
And now, let's get down to business in everyone's favorite segment, the Fully Involved Grand Prix Review.
The Fully Involved.
The Fully Involved Grand Prix Review.
The Formula One Heineken Australian Grand Prix 2022 did not disappoint. Pirelli decided on the C5, C3, C2 tire compounds, which is the first time since 2017 there wasn't a continuous step in the compound choices. Sally, give us some track details for the Australian Grand Prix.
The Formula One Heineken Australian Grand Prix 2022 takes place in Melbourne, Australia, at the Albert Park circuit. It's been 1,118 days since there was a race here, so there were a lot of horny mofos this year, and it was fucking epic. There were over 420,000 people at the Grand Prix over the weekend. It was the largest spectator attendance for a weekend sporting event in Australia's history. Here are the circuit details. This is virtually a new track. The design has been altered in the corners and the track itself has been completely resurfaced. The race on Sunday was 58 laps. The circuit has 3 DRS zones, 14 turns in total, and 1 lap around is 3.28 miles.
Let's talk about practice and qualifying. In free practice 3 at the very start, an announcement was made that the circuit would now have 3 DRS zones instead of 4, as they had originally planned and had actually been practicing in free practice 1 and 2. The turns that were affected, the DRS zone in turns 6 through 8 are being removed for safety reasons, is what they say. Also, in free practice 3, both Aston Martin drivers wreck their shit. Will their engineers be able to fix their cars before qualies? Stick around to see. Yes, in Q1, one Aston Martin driver gets his car fixed, and that's Lance Stroll. But then he wrecks his car halfway through. So since he's wrecked, this actually gives the engineers more time to fix Vettel's car. But even though he gets his car fixed, he doesn't do shit, and he ends up starting P17 or something. In Q2, Magnussen is out, and here I was building him up on the last few podcasts. I was wrong this week. Q3, Alonso wrecks. He has a hydraulic issue and couldn't downshift into the corner, so he did not get out of Q3. Sainz gets fucked by a yellow flag, never gets another good lap, and ends up having to start the race P9. Albon was disqualified from the qualies after falling to produce 1 liter of fuel for testing. And here are the results for the qualies. P1, Leclerc. P2, Verstappen. P3, Perez. P4, Norris. P5, Hamilton. P6, Russell. P7, Ricciardo. P8, Ocon. P9, Sainz. P10, Alonso. P11, Gasly. P12, Bottas. P13, Tsunoda. P14, Zhou. P15, Schumacher. P16, Magnussen. P17, Vettel. P18, Latifi. P19, Stroll. P20, Albon. And now, the trivia question of the day. Who has had the fastest pit stop leading up to the race on Sunday in Australia? I'll give you the answer at the end of this segment. 6 drivers started on hard tires and the rest of the field went with the medium tires. Those 6 drivers were Alonso, Sainz, Magnussen, Vettel, Stroll, and Albon. Lap 1. Sainz gets a bad start in the back and loses 5 positions. Hamilton darts ahead of Norris and Perez up to P3. Gasly jumps up to P9 and Tsunoda jumps to P11. So your top 10 grid after lap 1 is P1 Leclerc, P2 Verstappen, P3 Hamilton, P4 Perez, P5 Russell, P6 Norris, P7 Ricciardo, P8 Ocon, P9 Gasly, P10 Alonso. Lap 3, Sainz runs off track. He's off to a slow start. He has a hard time on the hard tires. Turn 10, he runs off the track, goes into the corner a little too fast, and narrowly escapes a collision. So he just had an off day. Off weekend, really. Since he went off track, there was a safety car. And this is when we learned about a new rule where drivers behind the leader cannot drive up next to the leading car and must stay behind after the safety car releases. The announcers call it the Verstappen rule, and I 100% agree. Stroll pits 2 times on laps 3 and 5 during the safety car. On the first pit, he gets rid of the hard tires and puts on the medium tires. On the second pit, on lap 5, he gets rid of the medium tires and put on the hard tires. That way, he can just go to the end of the race on the hard tires. Lap 10, Perez passes Hamilton at turn 3. Vettel goes off track at turn 11. Will he wreck and put up a DNF here? No, he recovers and is back to the race. Lap 12, Verstappen radios in that the left front tire is graining. Also, Leclerc has a 3.5 second lead on Verstappen. Lap 17, Magnussen runs off track attempting to overtake Tsunoda. Lap 19, Verstappen pits for hard tires and comes out at P7. On that note, let's do a quick Twitter poll. Question is, this year, how long does it take to break in a set of hard tires after pitting? 3 laps, 4 laps, 5 laps? Reach out to us at F1 Racing Podcast on Twitter with your answer. Back to racing. Lap 20, Hamilton threatens to overtake Perez. Perez pits on lap 21. Lap 22, there's a new term that I hear about. It's called the overcut. This is when Hamilton pits later than Perez and maintains a lead out of the pits. Lap 23, Leclerc boxes for hard tires. Also, Perez passes Hamilton without DRS, just pure speed. And when Hamilton is just about to attempt to overtake his spot back from Perez, a virtual safety car comes out and shits on his parade. What was the virtual safety car that shit on Hamilton's parade? It was Vettel smashing into the wall at turn 4 and retiring the car. That's 4 crashes from the Aston Martin team this weekend. 3 before the race ever even started. Also during the safety car, Russell gets an advantage from the safety car and pits. Now he sits in P3. Lap 26, the following drivers still have not boxed: Alonso, Magnussen, and Albon. All the drivers on the track are on hard tires now. Some just have more laps on them when compared to the others. Lap 27, Verstappen almost gets past Leclerc on the restart after Leclerc experiences some understeer. Russell begins pressuring Verstappen. Alonso gets past Hamilton and Perez to move into P4. Lap 30, Leclerc has a 2.7 second lead on Verstappen. Perez passes Alonso into the second DRS zone after turn 2. Lap 31, Hamilton passes Alonso into the first DRS down the main straight. Lap 34, Norris overtakes Magnussen for P7. Lap 36, Perez passes Russell moving into P3. Lap 39, Verstappen pulls over and retires the car. The car is on fire. Power went out on the steering wheel, as you see on the replay. Was it the battery? They should have a full report on that this week. Out of 3 races, Verstappen has retired the car twice due to mechanical failure. Both times, he was in a podium position when he had to retire. After watching the Red Bull team driver feed on F1 TV, I heard Verstappen say, as soon as he mentioned he smelt something burning on the radio, Christian Horner told him to stop the car, preferably next to a fire marshal, immediately. After Verstappen heard this and parked the car, he asked if he should get the fire extinguisher. As soon as he exited the car, it burst into flames and 2 brave track marshals came with fire extinguishers to help put out the blaze. I put a screenshot of this where Verstappen is motioning to the marshal, no more extinguisher. So you can check that out on the latest blog entry on the website f1racingpodcast.com. Lap 42, Stroll's penalized 5 seconds for weaving on the main straight in front of someone trying to overtake him. Lap 50, Gasly overtakes Stroll to P9. Lap 52, Bottas overtakes Stroll to P10. Lap 54, Leclerc radios in for the second time that they should go for the fastest lap. Now he already has it, and his race engineer says, no one can beat our current lap time. But he was wrong, because Alonso would have beaten their lap time had Leclerc not went for it anyway. He got it and the extra point that goes along with it. So he got the fastest lap and the extra point. Lap 57, Albon still has not boxed. What would his penalty be for not boxing? I believe it was said on the broadcast that it was a 30-second penalty, but Albon pits on lap 58, dropping from P7 to P10 in the points, all the way up from P20. And your race results: P1, Leclerc; P2, Perez; P3, Russell; P4, Hamilton; P5, Norris; P6, Ricciardo; P7, Ocon; P8, Bottas; P9, Gasly; P10, Albon. And P11, just to mention here, Zhou Guanyu finishes just outside the points again at P11. The fastest lap was set by Leclerc, and he has now set the fastest lap at the Albert Park circuit. Your driver of the day is Leclerc. He handled Verstappen like a boss, and he continues to blaze onto the podium with that Ferrari speed. The fastest pit stop of the day was Red Bull with 2.27 seconds in the pit stop. This beats the answer to the trivia question we asked earlier in the segment, which was who has had the fastest pit stop leading up to today's race. Previously, it was McLaren with 2.31 seconds for the pit stop. And now, because today Red Bull beat that record with a 2.27 second pit stop. So that's the fastest of the season so far. Key takeaways. Mercedes may not have the raw speed like Ferrari and Red Bull, but they have a well-balanced car in spite of all the porpoising, but that's a problem everyone is facing right now. Albon and the Williams team had a good one-stop strategy. They started on the hard tires and ran all the way to the end, literally. They gained 13 positions, pitted on the last lap, and finished P10 in the points. Red Bull had mechanical problems, and that's something to worry about. When your world champion driver is DNFing 66% of the time, fans will be WTFing. And finally, after these three races, Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull are all duking it out at the top of the standings. It looks like Mercedes made some excellent improvements in speed on their week off last week, and I can't wait to see how fast these teams will make development improvements and spice up the standings in the near future, because they're all still making improvements weekly. In conclusion, Verstappen had massive car failure and DNF'd for the second time in 3 races. McLaren drivers finished in the points at P5 and P6. Sainz had trouble with luck in the qualies, the car at the start, and his patience as he ran off track of the 3rd lap and DNF'd. Aston Martin drivers seemed to be having problems keeping the car in between the lines. Alex Albon was disqualified during quali Saturday for failing to supply 1 liter of fuel for testing. He started at the very back of the grid, drove the race on one set of hard tires before pitting on the last lap, and finished in the points. The Australian Grand Prix was fucking epic, and Leclerc continues to dominate with speed. That was an amazing race. Now, the drivers will be traveling next week, but we do have the next race weekend on Ferrari's home turf on April 22nd. You won't want to miss that one, and you won't want to miss the F1 Racing Podcast. And that about does it for today's F1 Racing Podcast. I'd like to thank you, the listeners, for downloading this podcast, and my sponsors, or should I say shamelessly, beg anyone with the courage to sponsor this amazingly informative and entertaining podcast. And to everyone listening to this, yes, that means you. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share with all your friends and enemies, follow me on Facebook and Twitter at F1 Racing Podcast, and give me a shining review on your preferred podcast platform so I can be the pole sitter of F1 Racing Podcasts. Till next time, be good or be good at being bad, whichever you do better.
You've been listening to the F1 Racing Podcast. Tune in next time to see what Billy will say next, and for God's sake, buy him a cup of coffee at our website. The website is buymeacoffee.com/F1 Racing Podcast.